or comments?
I am going to be, because I think this is a topic that we may have some questions for you, Mark, at the end. I mean, Drew and I, just to give some folks a background, and I know many of you have heard of or even were a member of the 2019 FHWA-led pooled fund TPF 5384 that really looked at the accuracy of AADT estimates based on vehicle probe samples. And it's been a topic that has been out there well over a decade. It's been a lot of research and a lot of work put into this this topic alone for a lot of good reasons. You know, money, budget being one of them. It is expensive to collect traffic count data, yet that data is so important to the DOTs. And the fund was called Exploring Non-Traditional Methods to Obtain Vehicle Volume and Class Data. And Streetlight Data was the contractor for that work, but Mark was an independent member of the Streetlight team, and his role was to perform a review about the accuracy of AADT values that were based on conventional short-term duration traffic counts, use the findings from that effort to help the pooled fund study set accuracy targets for acceptance of the vehicle probe-based volume statistics, and then to develop guidance that was to be used by states and other agencies who were looking at purchasing passive data. That guidance includes data validation tests for determining whether the purchase data meets required levels of accuracy. So this session will introduce, I'm emphasizing that, the concepts based behind the vehicle probe traffic volume estimates, talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses, and then describe the guidance that was developed for the TPF 5384 study. And at the end, again, we should have some time for questions, and I'm so looking forward to hearing this talk. So take it away, Mark.
Okay, well, that's interesting, and hopefully what I'm actually presenting matches what Susie wants, and if not, you guys can just ask questions and life will be fine. So this is really just
I'm sorry, I just want to double check. Laura, are you recording all of the sessions?
Yes, I am.
It looks like it's recording, yes.
Okay, just want to make sure everybody was aware of that and wanted to state that. Okay, go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
No problem. I have you guys, anybody, by the way, everybody else who's on this meeting can interrupt me at any point in time. As many of you know, I am a professional talker, so I'm very good at talking, and I have no problem whatsoever dealing with interruptions. So when you have questions, by all means, interrupt me. All right, so this is just really it's hard to say exactly what I thought I was doing versus what I actually ended up writing. So this is really a discussion of what came out, or it's going to be an introduction into how and why people do what they do in terms of vehicle probe data, what it all means, where it all comes from, how you can use it, and whether it's any good, and how you should go about judging it. So how's that? That's Mark's version of what Susie just said. So this really comes about because FHWA changed the HPMS requirements. It used to just be a short sample of a limited number of sites, and then they said, no, we want real live AADT values on every road in your state. And the question then becomes, oh my goodness, how the heck do we do that? Because it costs us too much to send crews out there, even on a 3-year, 4-year cycle basis. And the vendors of the world popped up and said, we can give you volume data anywhere based on vehicle probe data, the same data that's being used now to provide NPM RDS, the basically travel time data anywhere in the country that USDOT pays for. So there are multiple companies now willing to sell you the traffic volume estimates. States, by the way, can go out and buy the same raw data that the private companies are using, and so you could even do it yourself. And as Susie just said, the stuff I'm going to present for the most part is based off of this study that Streetlight did. And yeah, it's kind of strange being a member of the team, but in theory, an independent member of the team. And what that meant was I had nothing to do with their math. And I didn't even do the review of their math. All I did was help people decide how good the numbers should be if you were to buy them, which is kind of a strange question, but that's what it was. So we're going to start with an introduction to vehicle probe data. So the first thing is that there are a lot of different sources for vehicle probe data. US DOT wished we all had connected vehicles. You guys probably are glad we don't have lots and lots of connected vehicles, because you'd be running a gazillion more fixed data collection points, all of which you would have to keep up and operating from an operational perspective, which would drive you all batty. So we'll see where connected vehicles go. There are certainly some vehicles that are connected. The original source for all of this data was commercial fleet management systems, and that can be UPS or FedEx, both of whom track their vehicles everywhere they go. Of course, neither UPS nor FedEx will actually share their data, sell it any other way. They treat it very much as a corporate resource that holds an awful lot of their distribution science, and therefore those two companies don't let them go. But there are a wide variety of other fleet management systems that you can buy. And in addition, there are things like taxi systems. So taxi fleets have a lot of data. Now, Uber and Lyft do not give out their data either, but many other fleets send out information. Now, the cool thing about fleets is that fleet data comes with an understanding of who the fleet is. So that's a really good thing. I know that this is Orange Freight and they're long haul trucking, and therefore most of their trucks are pretty big. I know it's a local delivery service and they're following them around. Or I know it's a taxi service and hey, they're not trucks, these happen to be cars. So commercial fleet management systems, that's another good source. Mobile phones. We spend a lot of time on our phones. Our phones are constantly checking with cell towers to determine which cell tower has the strongest signal, and therefore if we call out or someone wants to call us, the mobile phone system wants to know the strongest cell tower in order to communicate with you, strongest signal. So when you have 3 cell towers that can see your phone, you can triangulate and estimate where that phone is. And so there's been a lot of research on using cell towers to estimate where phones go. The last system is the system that is most commonly used, in large part because of the combination of accuracy and volume of data coming from it. So this is called location-based services. LBS is the acronym. And what that is if you have a smartphone, many of the applications on your smartphone want to know where you are in order to give you the correct service. For example, I happen to be a customer of YouTube TV, meaning I get my regular television plus ESPN plus various other services through this communication service called YouTube TV. It costs me way more than it ought to, but hey, that's life. When I travel, my cell phone, if I go to watch on my computer or I watch on my cell phone, I want to watch TV, Google always says, oh, you're not in your home district anymore, because that changes what television services they want to give me. Right? They want to give me local news. They want to say, oh, sorry, that game is is blacked out in your particular area. You don't get to see that. So Google TV is one form of location-based services, but lots and lots of other applications use location-based services to send you advertisement. Hey, you're just right across the street from Starbucks. Did you know we have a 15% discount if you walk in the next 5 minutes? So a wide variety of applications use your phone to determine your location. And they have the ability, depending on how evil they are, and Facebook is incredibly evil when it comes to app data, they can track your location over time, even when you are not using the application. They take that data and they use it for their own purposes, but they also sell that data to other vendors. And that data is trace data, time and location at a particular point through the day. And those applications can ping your phone for that location, every second, every minute, every 5 minutes, every 15 minutes. The more often they ping, the better their accuracy, but the more they zap the battery on your phone. So a polite application only checks your phone periodically unless you're actively using that application, in which case they use it a lot. If you notice that your battery life is suddenly shortened, it may very well be because an app is looking at your phone way too often and requiring energy in order to understand where you happen to be through GPS and then ship that information off. The final type of vehicle probe data I will talk about very briefly is Wi-Fi or Bluetooth re-identification. Your phone, again, is constantly looking, and by the way, other Wi-Fi and Bluetooth devices, for example, the air pressure sensors on tires are Bluetooth devices, and your car is often equipped with both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. And as you drive around, there are those devices are constantly looking for other devices to connect to because that might be of assistance to you. So we can place fixed devices that listen for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth IDs traveling by. And when you compare one Wi-Fi identification at 3rd and Pike to a different Wi-Fi, the same vehicle being identified at a different location, 4th and Pike, I can say, ooh, this device went from 3rd and Pike and 4th and Pike in however long it took to go from one location to the other, because again, they're all time stamped. That gives me the fact that vehicles were present, and it gives me, or devices are present, it's not the same thing as a vehicle, and it can give me a travel time between them, all of which are information that I can use. So these are multiple kinds of vehicle probe data sets. Different vendors have access to different combinations of these data sets, depending on how much they're willing to pay. Okay, the next thing about vehicle probe data sets that you should know about is that the data sets themselves change over time. The easiest example of that is location-based services. Most application developers buy data from about 400 of these apps, okay, a wide variety of them. And the 400 apps change slowly over time because the vendors of a particular application shut down that app. It's not enough people are using it, they're losing money, and so the app goes away. And so the developers then take a different application, and therefore the particular apps that are reporting change from month to month to month. Now, the cell phones that report location-based services data therefore change depending on which apps are actually being used, right? Because let's pretend Facebook actually goes out of business. That changes a whole lot of phones that have been giving you information through the Facebook app and is replaced by the TikTok app, right? And so you shift from an older generation, which happens to be using Facebook, to the younger generation that's currently using TikTok, or perhaps the next generation of even younger people who will decide that TikTok is only for old people, okay? What this does is it changes the kinds of information and the particular devices that are periodically reporting, and therefore every so often, every month, every quarter, the vendor has to recalibrate their model that takes these cell phone locations, the location-based services, in order to estimate what's going on out in the world. This does cause some potential issues for trend analysis, in that the analysis we're doing is using somewhat different input data over time. So this can be an issue. It might not be an issue. Again, if we do periodic calibration, in theory, the calibration should take care of it. But there are issues, particularly where the amount of data is low. You're going to hear me say this a lot. Where there's lots of data being analyzed, you tend to do pretty good on most estimates. where data is low in volume, and the number of phones you see or the devices that go by Wi-Fi cell towers, or the number of commercial vehicles that drive by this particular location that have fleet management systems, where those numbers go down to small numbers for any reason whatsoever, our ability to use that small sample and estimate what's actually happening on the ground sinks. Okay, let me stop for just a second. Any questions about that? Okay.
I'm sure they're digesting it, Mark.
I'm sure they are too. But I will pause, and also gives me a chance to drink.
Yep, it was, I mean, I had to hear this like 3-4 times before I was starting to really understand some of the nuances and what this means. So if some of you are going like, gee, I'm not sure, I mean, it does take a while. Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Oh, what is, I see something in the chat. I'll try to remember to look at it from Eric. What is a good volume number for accuracy? Yeah, we'll deal with that a little later. And if you're in terms of the number of pings, I can't answer that. If it's in terms of how accurate traffic numbers might be, we'll get to that in a minute. And we'll hear a lot about that. The answer is always, it depends. So we'll see a lot about that. Okay, but good questions. And yes, you can put questions in the chat as well as interrupt me.
I was just going to mention, so I'll keep an eye on chat for you. The other thing would be to do it in the group instead of to you directly, and that way you don't have to watch for it. So I don't see a chat.
If I don't see it, then I won't answer it, though. So we can all wait till the end.
I'll interrupt. Okay.
Yeah, I'm easy. Whatever way it makes sense. Perfectly fine. All right. Onward. So all of those weird data sources that I just got through talking about, in general, they all provide a geographic location, an ID, and a timestamp, where timestamp is date and time, right? And the ID is a device. And the device can be a person or it can be a vehicle. And those things are very different from each other. And it helps to know. So if it's a fleet management system, I know it's a vehicle, and most of the time I even know basically what kind of vehicle it is. A taxi, a delivery van, a long-haul truck. If it's your phone, I don't know so much. Okay, so, but still, they give me time and space, and I can follow that device through time and space. So you see a picture down on the bottom right. This is what's called a trace or a trajectory. And each of those blue dots is a different reporting of a location and time for one particular ID. Now, this ID happens to be reporting very frequently, either that or it's a person who's walking, and it's not reporting very frequently, right? And again, most devices at rest report about once every 15 minutes. When a device is heavily in use, it can report as much as once every second. So, for example, if you download the INRIX navigation app, it reports every 15 minutes unless you are using it. At least last I knew, this was its version. But if you are actively navigating with it, you've asked it for directions and you have it up on your screen and it's talking to you, then it's reporting every second. Because it wants to be able to tell you, here comes the exit. It's 100 yards away. You better be in the right-hand lane. So it needs to really pay attention to where it is. And therefore, it's actively checking its location. It's actively giving you directions. And so it's doing an awful lot of that work. And therefore, it has a data point every second. When it's off, the problem with that, of course, is it's sucking battery life, unless you happen to have it plugged into your car, in which case you don't care it's sucking battery life because you're sticking energy back in it. But if you're walking around and you have that app open and it's just in your pocket because you forgot to turn it off, then your phone is dead after an hour, 2 hours, right? And then you you take the phone off, you say, yeah, I hate that app, it's killing my phone. And then INRIX is mad. So this is why they change back and forth. The other key thing, as I said, was, do you actually know whether the data point you're getting is a vehicle or not? The big down point, although it's also a big selling point of location-based services, is it's all about a phone. It's not necessarily about a vehicle. And sometimes you have your phone in a vehicle, and it's a great vehicle probe. Other times you're sitting in your house or you're walking down the street and your phone is still reporting location, even though you haven't left your house in 3 days or 2 years because it's the pandemic, right? It's still checking your location. So if you are using one of the data sources where you don't know what the device is, you actually have to do mode split analysis by looking at how quickly the pings are moving and where they're going. All right, so just be aware that that is an interesting aspect of using, in particular, phone data. All right, so different versions of data collection in vehicle probes. Sometimes you know it's a vehicle or not. Sometimes that's a preliminary step. Different devices report at different speeds, the ping rate, how often they report. Different techniques have different penetration rates, meaning what percentage of vehicles traveling down, I'm looking at my window, at Interstate 5, you guys could pretend you're in New Mexico, Interstate 10, what percentage of vehicles have a phone and that are reporting to my vendor? And that changes whether you're in Albuquerque or in Santa Fe or on the road in between them or on the road to Texas, right? And trying to understand how the penetration rate changes is an important part of determining things like traffic volume from the number of devices you see and the frequency with which you see pings. Therefore, when I take this mishmash of different data sets, analyze it, and predict things like traffic volume, my results vary depending on things like size of the road and things like where I am in the country. Because the relationship between the number of devices I see, whether it's taxi fleets, which I see in urban areas and I don't see very often in rural areas. And so guess what? The commercial taxi fleet data could work pretty well in an urban area, and it doesn't work very well in a rural area. On the other hand, long-haul trucks tend to be pretty good on interstates and rural areas, and they might struggle in many parts of an urban area. So this is why you're mashing these things together, right? It also tells you why the accuracy that you get out of these things, regardless of the math, can vary from state to state, from a region within a state to another region within a state, from a big road to a small road. So, as I said, when you get the data, the first thing you do is you do a mode split. Sometimes it comes to you, hey, these are trucks. We already know they're trucks because that's where I'm getting the data from. These are taxi cabs. I know where that is. These are a bunch of phones. And therefore, I have to do separation of whether the people using this